I'm John. Welcome to The Stammerer. This is a new podcast, and over the next few weeks, I hope to bring you some insight into the world of stammering and share some thoughts and some feelings and maybe some interviews. Thank you for listening. Hello, and I guess this episode this week is about me. This is a new podcast, so I guess you need to understand a little bit more about me and who I am. So, my name is John, and I've stammered for 33 years, and it's only recently that I have said to people that I stammer. For many years I've hidden it away as if it was something wrong, but over the last few weeks I've had to talk about it due to issues which I will explain in another episode. Who am I? I'm 40 years old. I'm very, very blessed. I have a wife and 3 amazing kids. They're all girls, and I feel very, very blessed to have those. I have no issue shouting at them. I do not stammer when I shout. So I've had a stammer for 33 years, since I was 7 years old, I guess, and due to an incident that happened prior to that, which again I will talk about that. And ever since then I've hidden it away. I'm what you call a covert stammerer. I've been able to, over the years, to hide words or amend words to try to fit in with people, like a chameleon, I guess. And I don't know if other people who have a stammer feel this way, because you feel like society expects you to fit in with them. So, and that may not be a case that that's true, but that's how I've always felt. So the first incident for me was when I was probably about 9, and I had to stand up in front of the whole class to read out a page in a book, and I just couldn't get the words out. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't talk. And then of course it escalates, and then of course it plays on your mind, and then ever since that time, I've stammered and hidden it. Now, who am I? I guess the person I've been, over the last few weeks, I've been kind of trying to figure out who I am. The things that I want in life have changed, and due to a bout of mental health, it's been time to acknowledge and talk about stammering. It shouldn't be a taboo. It shouldn't be a stigma. People should be able to talk about it, and we need more opportunities and more platforms for people to talk and it be out there in the mainstream. So back to the intro, I guess. So I then through school, very fortunate to go to a really good school, where I stammered, but I always tried to be the class clown and be happy, but underneath I always knew that whenever somebody asked me my name or to read a book out loud, those are the days where I'd pretend to be sick. I'd hide, and I guess that's been a big part of my life, is whenever I believe that there's an opportunity for me to show that I stammer, So I was very fortunate to go to a good secondary school where I had some good friends, and that was, I guess, where the stammering was more poignant for me, because when you get asked to read in class, or you get asked your name for the first time, and you kind of start to meet people and you don't sound like them. So I used to try to hide away, and the opportunities that I didn't want to have, because I felt that I couldn't have those opportunities because of the stammer, and I sort of shut myself away. But at the same time, I was trying to be the class clown, so I tried to mask it by trying to be funny and happy, when all the time I was not. There were opportunities where I was exceptional at sport. Maybe exceptional is a strong word, but I was certainly really good at sport, and I denied myself the opportunity because before the start of a race you'd have to say your name. So because of that, I didn't want to go to a race, even though inside I desperately loved it. I loved the sport, I loved to play sport, but I just felt that I couldn't, and the teachers and my parents couldn't understand why I could do these things, but I was obstinate. I just didn't want to do it because I just couldn't face the embarrassment at that particular time. So I progressed through secondary school, and then at age 14, so my secondary school was in Wales, in a small town as it was at the time in Wales, and then my parents then moved due to work up to London, to the East End of London, which was an eye opener as it was. So they decided to move there. So I initially stayed with my grandparents, and then eventually I moved up to a new school, and this was absolutely probably one of the worst experiences of my life. So not only was I a young man of 14 and a half with a stammer, but with a Welsh accent, and the bullying began. And I used to get chased from school, called names, and in some respects I don't necessarily blame kids for being kids, because I guess back in the 90s, mental health and stammering and acceptance, I guess, was starting to come to the forefront, and it's not as it is now. So I went through a horrid time, and from that day I vowed that I would try to improve this stammer and try to kind of be stronger. Now, unfortunately, I didn't get any help at that time. No, not pointing fingers, but I just didn't get any help, and I look back now and I think that, and this is my plea to you, is that if anybody has an issue and they feel like they're alone, you're actually not. If you feel like you have a stammering issue, or you feel like you have a speech issue, or any kind of issue, then please, you need to reach out to somebody that can help, because it upsets me to think that as a young man, as 15, needing help, you're not equipped at that time to deal and understand that you can have help. You just have to ask for it. So I kind of reverted into myself. So eventually I left that school and went back to my original school in Wales, and again I started to flourish more. That vow that I made to myself that I would try to control this stammer or try to do something. And I tried, I was able to, because I was back in a place where I felt comfortable with people who kind of were aware. And I guess the thing about a stammerer that you need to understand is that we are most comfortable with people that we know. So once we know that people know that we stammer, it kind of becomes easier. And when you talk about it, you don't necessarily stammer. So I found myself in class and I was able to stand up and read a book. I wasn't fluent necessarily, it wasn't perfect, but I was able to talk, and it was like an epiphany. It was like this, okay, so I'm comfortable, I can talk with friends. And then of course I left school and I had to move to London. So eventually I moved to London when I was 16, and that was a whole new ball game. I still had an accent, and I was determined to lose that accent, and I decided to change how I talk. I decided to purposely change my accent, to the dismay of people that kind of listened to me before. I went from this Welsh kid speaking with a thick Welsh accent to this East End of London, somewhere in between East End, Welsh, hybrid, weird accent. But what I did discover happened, because you have to change how you talk, and my stammering got less and less and less. So I pursued this newfound speech, as it was, but there was a terror underneath where I felt that if I reverted back to having a Welsh accent, that I would somehow, in some way, revert back to the old ways that I would. So I would purposely avoid listening or talking to anybody in Welsh. And there was an instant where I used to love snooker, and I used to love to watch it. And there's a particular game where the commentator has a Welsh accent. So for the best part of 4 or 5 hours, I turned, as it was then, CFAX, was it 888 on for the subtitles, and put earplugs in my ears so I didn't have to listen to somebody in Welsh for fear of reverting back to the stammer. Then I progressed, and then I probably got to 19, and then I guess once the accent embedded in, obviously then the stammer starts to come back, because, and this has to be said, is that there isn't a cure for a stammer. There are some people who are fluent, or people who will say that they have conquered their stammer, and some people have, and some people get the confidence and they're able to speak. They are fluent. And I've had over the years, I mean, even now, the job that I do, I have to speak to clients, and I speak to people on the phone every day. Now, let me tell you, for a stammerer, the very mention of a phone gives me sweaty palms just thinking about it. Even to this day, even though I can call someone up, call a client up, talk on the phone, a telephone call to a stammerer in public, in front of people, is, let me tell you, is an act of terror. So I fully understand this. So my stammer does come back, and this could be triggered by a number of things. If I'm tired, if I am stressed, as particularly stressed, or if I feel like I don't know what I'm speaking about, I kind of need to feel comfortable in the subject that I'm speaking about. So fast forward to about 2020, I guess, and my stammer kind of decided to come back with a vengeance. So I decided to try all these different avenues, not therapy or any kind of course. I just decided to try to do different things that worked, and I had to push myself. So, you know, I would go into Mackie D's, for example, and I wanted a cheeseburger, really wanted a cheeseburger, and I'd get to the counter and I'd be practicing it in my mind. Cha, cheese, 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 fillet of fish. Because you can say fish, I could say fish. So probably for the best part of 2-3 years, I didn't have a cheeseburger because I couldn't say. And it sounds so ridiculous to say to people that imagine your primary form of communication, and there are things in life that you want, but you can't actually say it. Because imagine putting yourself in a position where you want to go in and you want to order a coffee and you want a latte, but you can't say it. So it's something as simple as just being able to go in and ask for something that you want. And it's so stressful just walking up to a counter, you're standing in that line, you're looking at that board, thinking to yourself, I really want that latte, I really want that cortado, I really want something. And all you can say is a black Americano. So probably for the best part of 6 years, I drink black coffee. Well, now, because that's all I could say for such a long time. So over the years, I got into work. So as I say now, you know, I'm very fortunate that I was able to get some fluency together, and I've always worked in finance jobs. And you know, and due to the fact that, you know, I didn't want to go to university, and that's probably the biggest regret that I have, is because I had the lack of help through a lot of it through myself, and there was no steer or understanding what I could achieve. I deprived myself of going to university. So I left school with minimal exam results. You know, I did okay, considering I kind of hid away. So I could have gone to university, but I decided not to, because I don't think I could have handled that stress. The thought of not being able to go and speak and being in classes with all those people, I denied myself an educational right because I stammered. So fast forward to my jobs, I got more confident in the jobs. I had interviews. I've also had some terrible interviews where you sit there and one of the first questions they ask you is, tell me about yourself. And if you're not prepared or you're cold, particularly in my case, there is just no way words are coming out. So people may, over the years, they may hear this, they kind of may not. They may have seen me sometimes as being rude or shy, or I'm nervous. I'm not nervous. It's just I can't get the words out. So there's definitely a perception piece, and particularly in the corporate world, of which I've spent the majority of my career, there's definitely not a stigma, but people just, there's a line. Okay, so those people that do well are the ones that can talk and make their voice heard. And I'd always kind of was envious of those people, because in my head I always had these big aspirations of being able to do things and want to do things. I mean, I've got a decent IQ, you know, as people link fluency and being able to talk with high IQs, and you know, because they're fluent, and when you talk to people who are able to talk, you get more comfortable. So the corporate world, particularly back in the early thousands, is definitely not what it was today, and particularly not in the area where I used to work in. And that's nobody's fault. It is just the world of work. So I went into work and I was just left with the basic exams. So I decided to teach myself accounting. It would have been better for me to go to a place, these schools where you can get educated easier. But again, because of my stammer, I was scared, and the very thought of just meeting new people where I had to say my name, and inevitably you sit round in a group and you say, hi, I'm John, hi, I'm this. It terrified me. So because of that, I did a correspondence course online and taught myself accounting from books, because I couldn't deal with sitting there meeting new people. So I progressed, and interviews, and interviews, as I've said, are a very interesting and difficult experience. I mean, if you want stress, the biggest stress, ever, interviews when I'd have to prepare for days in advance, even walking up to the interview where you walk into the, you have prepared yourself, okay? You look at your CV, you look at the job spec, you know it, okay? In your mind, I can talk in my mind, there's no stammering that takes place in my mind, and I go through the interview process, and then you walk up and you walk in through the doors of the office, or you walk in through the doors of the business, and you meet reception, and the whole time in my head I'm thinking, say your name. They're going to ask you who you are. My name's John. Now you walk up to the front desk, and there could be two desks. You get the reception desk, which is not the actual front desk of the business, so you navigate that. They ask you your name. Hello, so I'm John. I've said it, and I'm just like, great, this interview could go well. If at that point you mess up and you don't say your name, confidence can drop. So you've gone in, you've gone through the first part of it, and then you go into the second, to actually go to the reception of the business. And then sometimes they will tell them your name before you go, but then sometimes they don't, and then you have to say it again. And in my head I'm thinking, I've said John once today, can I say it again? And then you say and then for me that's the interview. Then I'm just on the floor. So over the years, you with speech and fluency, it's really important that you keep on talking and talking and talking. So over the years I was able to, just through sheer bloody mindedness, just talking and being able to get some kind of fluency. So as I've said, that was my kind of brief history of myself and work, and as I've said already at the beginning, I'm 40 years old. I've been stammering for a long time. I have, as I've said, a wife who is very supportive. She is amazing. We have 3 wonderful girls, and one of the biggest fears I had was, will any of them stammer? Because stammer is hereditary. It does run in the genes. There is evidence to support this, not necessarily all of the time. I am predisposed because there are stammerers historically within my family. So our girls are slightly older now, so one of my biggest fears as a parent was that, will they stammer? Would I recognise it early enough that I'd be able to help them? And that was just my biggest concern, is when you should be, you know, happy and listening to them speak, and you know, that was the biggest thing for me, was to, when they spoke, you know, even if there was a kind of any kind of little stammer here, as they were kind of when they first learned to speak, and they don't, and even if they did, there'd be absolutely nothing wrong with that. But that was the biggest fear as a parent. Now, thinking about my children and my family, you know, when you first have your kids and you first learn about them, and you think, you know, I'm about to be a parent, you do something what's called an NCT class, which is a class that you attend to teach you how to be a parent. And you sit there with a bunch of people that you pretend to be friends with, and then eventually you're not. It's just a big pretense. Now, one of the biggest fears for me was not the birth, not becoming a dad, was just in case my wife wanted to go to an NCT class, and she wanted to go to an NCT class, and you sit around. Well, my thoughts were, okay, this could work. Do you have a name badge? Because the first thing you do when you stammer and you meet anyone new is you almost do like a wreck of the situation. You know, do you have to say your name? Are you going to sit round in a group and introduce yourself? You know, will somebody introduce you? You know, those are the things that you do. And I thought, okay, fine. You know, we probably won't sit around. Who's going to want to sit around in a chair with strangers and introduce themselves and, you know, say things about themselves and about being a parent? You know, surely that won't happen. So we booked the class, and I somewhat confidently thought, yeah, we'll be fine. Something that she wants to do, and you don't argue with your pregnant wife. So we went to the class, and we opened the door, and lo and behold, there are chairs in a circle, and my worst fears become true. So we sit there in a circle, and then the leader of the pack comes in and says, I'm so and so. I'm going to now walk around the room, and you need to say your name and why you want to be a parent. Yeah. So I managed to sort of stumble through my name. My technique, sometimes, even now, is I kind of pretend to sneeze. So when somebody's about to ask me my name, I just pretend to have a sneeze just to buy more time. Or I'll be having a chat and I'll suddenly just talk about something else that doesn't make sense, because I can change that word, but that word might be something completely obscure, and then I need to lead that conversation in that road because I can say that word. So sometimes people think, I guess I'm a bit strange because I have a different conversation because of the word I've just said, and it leads me down another path, which is quite interesting. So a question I often think to myself is, what would I do if I didn't have a stammer? Now, that, you know, I would have loved to have, you know, been an actor or sing. And I'm not saying that I can sing, but I would have loved to have just entertained people. You know, I'm an extrovert introvert type, where I love to be around people. I love to talk to people. You know, I was always the class clown. I always tried to make people laugh. But there's this other part of me where sometimes I can't face speaking. I can't talk. There are days and times where I can't speak. I don't want to be around anybody, and it's a balance between I'm this happy, outgoing person who loves to talk to people, have a drink, have a laugh. I've tried to introduce myself to people, but then there's this other side where if I'm just not feeling it, there's nothing that I can do. It's really hard, and the opportunities that I've deprived myself, the experiences, I guess I've never had, because I just went down a line in terms of work of just whatever would have come to me. So I would have loved to have done something else, just comedian, an actor, something where you entertain people, as opposed to the corporate world where, as much as I enjoy it and it's okay, it's not necessarily what I would have picked as a career. So I wonder, thinking about this, and please feel free to contact me for suggestions about future podcasts, or just feel free to contact me in regards to anything that you have. If you just want to speak about anything, so please leave a comment on the podcast, and I'd be more than happy to get back to you. Or you can contact me at the stammerer at gmail.com. As you can see there, I have an issue with G's. So I'll put my email in the description, and please feel free to contact me. Also, if you've never heard of them, these people are absolutely amazing. It's stammer.org, and I believe they're the British Stammering Association. So please check them out. I will also put a link in the description for them as well. And please feel free to give them some money as well, because everything they do, they have to raise it through grants and through the work that they do. So please feel free to give them some money. And I think that's all really for this episode. As I say, this is hopefully the first of many. And if you have any suggestions, or you want to come on the podcast and speak to me about your experiences, if you know somebody that stammers, then please feel free to get in to contact, and we can talk about it. I think the more we highlight this, and the more we contact each other, and the more we broadcast this out to an audience, the better the world will be. So thank you for listening to this podcast, and I'll speak to you on the other side. Thank you.